Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am Kellie Fitzgerald. This is the Positive Vibes podcast, and I am back again with Heather Lang. Thank you so much for being on again. We had such a great time last time. These are always fun.
Oh, yes, we really did have a great time, and thank you again for having me. I'm very honored and happy to be here.
Yeah, we're both kind of coughing and I'm wheezing and stuff. That it's
Yes.
For me, it's a bad allergy day. So
Yeah,
please bear with us.
right, just in
We're
case.
doing our best here.
We
Uh,
have plenty of water.
Tissues, everything we need, we're good.
That's right. We're good, it's part of life, you have to just go with it sometimes.
Yep. So today we're going to start off talking about um, letting people do what they're doing. This really amazing book just came out called Let Them. And it's a whole concept that I think a lot of people in our arena have been talking about for years and years and years. And when I first saw the book, I was like, well, it's about time one of us wrote a book. You know,
Right.
it's just a really simple concept, and yet it's really tough for people to do.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
you know, people do tend to come in and out of our lives,
Mhm.
and how many times I know earlier in my life, I was a major people pleaser, and I just wanted everybody to like me. So if
Same.
someone started putting some distance between us, I'd
Mhm.
chase them down the street. "Where are you going? Why are you leaving me?" And that was a big thing that I had to grow through. I had to work through that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same,
so
because I was the same way, I'm like, "We can make it work,"
yeah.
"We can make it work. We can make it work," and it's like, nope, you just sometimes have to just let them go.
Yeah, and it like I said, it sounds really simple, but, for me,
Mhm.
it was more about learning to love myself and respect myself enough to know some people you can make an effort with and it works out and it's great.
Yeah.
I
Mm,
have friends I've known for, okay, we're going to go with a long time,
yes.
a very long time. And, we've grown apart, we've come together, you just expect that in
Yes.
certain relationships. But there
Mhm.
are others that I honestly have grown to believe, whoa, I don't know what that was. That I have honestly grown to believe um, the universe is protecting you from.
Yes.
And
Right?
I've had several people in my life, and you probably have had this too,
Yes.
where you go through life, we grow, we change, we evolve, and not everybody around us does.
Exactly. Exactly. When you're on the healing journey, when you're on an ascension path and you're putting a lot of work into it, you're going one way and everybody else is just kinda either stagnant or going the other way.
Yeah,
And that's okay. That's what we're meant to do here, learn and grow and just let them do their own path, right? If unless they want your help, there's nothing you can do for them.
right. And I think one thing that people need to understand, it doesn't mean anybody's toxic.
Right.
It means your paths have just kind of, you know, gone separate ways. Uh,
Correct.
It doesn't mean that everyone that is no longer in your life is toxic. Having
Right.
said that,
Yeah.
what is what is one of your red flags that people have that make you think, maybe this person is becoming toxic, or maybe they always were, and I just looked the other way because I've done
Right.
that myself.
Right. And I start to see people wanting to control situations, wanting to control your behavior, wanting you to do whatever they want to do all the time. Right? There's a lot of that. I was dating somebody for a while, and this person did not like the way I dress, but he didn't really come out and say that. He would say things like, "Why don't you wear more dresses? Why don't you put on a little mascara?
Yeah.
Why don't you let your hair down? Why don't you?" And I'm like, "Why don't I what?" this is this I thought you liked me, not what I wore, not what kind of makeup I had on, not the way my hair was, right? Why don't
Right.
you do something with the fuzzies on your face? He once said to me. I'm like, fuzzies on my face. What is he talking about? So that started the red flags with me.
Yeah.
Right? And he was trying to control things, and he didn't like when I would ask him nicely to do something because he was getting the mirror, mirror on the wall type of information back, and he wasn't ready to go there, right? He
Right.
wasn't ready to do a healing journey or be on an ascension path. So those are some of the red flags I see.
Yeah.
Recently, I had a friend who I was with, as a friend for a very long time, and things just kind of deteriorated again because of the control situation, right? And we have to, again, part of the book even says it, let them do their
Mhm.
own thing and let you do your thing.
Right.
Once you try to control everything, that's where a lot of, tension comes in, right? A lot of drama, a lot of chaos. But once you drop the need to control somebody or a situation or a relationship, whatever it may be, you're free.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
freed your.
Yeah. That's something that I think women may have a harder time with that than men do.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's part of just our genetic makeup in many, many, many ways.
Yes.
I did a podcast that we were talking about things you inherit from your families. And I
Yes.
think a lot of people inherit those behaviors from
Hmm.
their families. You know, if
Yes.
you were raised in a situation where you saw
Hmm.
the people you were supposed to be looking up to, people you were supposed to be emulating, and you saw them with this behavior,
Yes.
you kind of take that as, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right. You
And I
take
think,
that energy on.
yeah, and I think a lot of the time we have to be conscious enough to
Hmm.
look at what we're doing and where it came from.
Right.
It's just something that is an individual journey. We're all at a different place. And I think it's really easy for someone who's been through that to look at
Yes.
other people going, why don't you just see this? And you
Yes.
can't do that to
Right.
everyone because we're all on a different journey. But we do
Correct.
get that from our families a lot. Often we do.
Yes. I completely agree with that, and from society, from friends growing up sometimes too, right? And, teachers, even just in school systems. And for me, it's really looking back at all that stuff and going, well, it wasn't a wrong thing, right?
Right.
It was a learning experience that I can then grow from, gain
Mhm.
some wisdom around, and then let that behavior go or let that feeling go. And being the energy work portion of not wanting to control everything.
Yeah. How do people realize when they're trying to control things? I know for me, I literally get a pit in my stomach when I realize that I'm going down that road because when I grew up, that's what I saw adults trying to do.
Mhm.
People were trying to be in control of every situation.
Right.
And today, when I see myself say, you should, oh, wait, no, you
Uh-huh.
should make up your own mind,
Yes.
because it does, it almost makes me ill. But how do you realize when you need to change course?
And like you said, the should word, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, right?
Mhm.
Those are like the biggest controlling words I think that we have in our language right now because we say those type of things to people. Well, you should have done that then. Well, who are you to give them advice?
Right,
First, unsolicited advice,
right,
probably,
right.
right? Because secondly, might be exactly what their soul needs to experience for their own wisdom, their own growth, right? Their own healing journey. Whether or not they're aware of it is another thing, right? But again, those woulda, shoulda, couldas, or I would get really, really upset if somebody wasn't treating my items with respect.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, simple example, the dishwashing machine, right? Do not put wood in your dishwashing machine, okay? Public service announcement, don't do it, okay? But the guy that I was with constantly did it and broke my knife, he broke my cutting board, and I'm like, "Dude, stop it." So I would get so mad at him, but he just wasn't thinking about it, right?
Right, right.
And again, should I have let him? Should I have? But for me, it was like a disrespect factor
Yeah,
in that type of a thing, right? My items, that you're using type of a thing. And I've become a little bit more lenient on that type of a thing, but again, that was me attempting to control him,
yeah.
right? I'd get mad, I would get angry, I'd get upset, I get frustrated. And some of those feelings that we have can also help give us a message about maybe we are trying to control somebody, something, around us in our lives, at work.
It's also, in my mind, an indication that maybe we need to pay more attention to ourselves and, have more respect for ourselves. Because to me, and I know in an abusive situation that I was in many, many, many years ago, um, what I learned really was that I just needed to be heard.
Yes.
I just needed to be respected from someone because I would go and I would try to tell people what was going on. I was looking for someone to help me get out of that relationship. And all of the people around me were like, well, you should go and work it out. Well, what did you do? And they turned it back on me. And
Mhm.
for someone that grew up in such a dysfunctional arena as I did, I didn't have any self esteem to begin with. So when people were telling me what I should have done or asking
Mhm.
me what I did, um, it made me feel like I deserved that abuse. It
Mm.
wasn't until years of therapy later, after
Yeah.
that situation, that a therapist looked at me and she said, "Did you ever think you just wanted someone to hear you?" And I went, "Whoa!"
Yeah. Major light bulb, right?
And sometimes when we think we're probably controlling something, we really just want to be heard. But again, you have to let people be who they are. And,
Right.
my big pet peeve has been the way people treat animals for my entire life, my entire existence.
Yes.
And that is the quickest way to lose me from your life is to injure or act like you're gonna don't even think about hurting an animal,
Right.
you know. Uh,
Right.
so everybody has that. Everybody has that
Mhm.
one thing that matters to them more than anything else. Uh,
Exactly.
it's I had a client who I to me this is like near suicide. I'm sorry, it is. She was dating a biker and she got mad and kicked his bike over.
Oh.
And she told me this and I went, probably not in the hospital. But in that instance, he was the one that looked at her and said, "What do you need me to do right now?"
Aw.
And I thought, wow, what biker gang is he a member of? You know?
Yeah.
But but it can
Like
be
like psychologists on bikes or something? Yeah.
right. But sometimes that's what people need. If you see someone is leaving your life,
Mhm.
look at it.
Mhm.
What do I need right now? Why is this bothering me?
Yes.
Why am I feeling guilty? And a lot of times we do. We're feeling
Mhm.
guilty because all of a sudden this person doesn't want to hang out. Um,
Right.
you have to realize it's not all you. There are two people,
Yes.
sometimes many more in every
Yes.
relationship.
True.
And you just have to look at what do they need? What do you need?
Mhm.
And put yourself first, I think
Yes.
is really important there.
It's very important. 'Cause
Yeah.
if you're not, then you're not showing yourself self-love, self-respect. You're not being confident in your own self abilities, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us back to, having to do things for yourself.
Yeah.
more often, right? Do your energy work, do the things that make you feel happy. I have one less friend in my life, but I have so much more like self-respect for myself because I all of a sudden I was like, wow, I'm like, I feel free, I feel happier. Like I
Yeah.
was always dreading
Yeah.
being around that person. It was kind of like energy vampire-ish type of stuff, which I was like, oh, well, I understand because of this, or I understand because of that. And I'm an energy worker and I'm supposed to help people. And
Yeah.
I was not helping myself doing that.
That's a big one for empaths and energy workers, and I do think that most of the time those are the same people, and
Yes, I think so too.
it's just when you've programmed yourself, "I'm here to help people."
Yes,
You really have to help yourself. You really have to do that, and that was something I struggled with for years too.
absolutely.
It's just really difficult for a lot of people,
Yes,
to not put themselves first.
right. Well,
Yeah.
and if you can't help yourself, you're not going to be able to help anybody, right?
Right.
That's the whole airplane oxygen analogy.
Right.
Oh,
Right,
I mean,
exactly, yeah,
people say that for a reason.
yeah.
You have to do that because if you're putting an oxygen mask on your child in the airplane and you don't have yours on and you're gonna die, right? Who's gonna take care of the child,
Yeah,
right? And I know that's extreme, but that is really where we need to look at those type of things, right?
it really is, and unfortunately, for someone who can't get out of that habit of
Mhm.
helping themselves or developing self-love or developing self-esteem, it can be deadly. It can,
Yeah,
and
right.
unfortunately, sometimes it is. So
Yeah.
it really is important. I I'm one of those people that think we should be, having meditation classes in grammar school,
Yes.
because it really does, it really does help. Um,
Yeah.
I've had coaching clients that I think everyone should meditate. That's just me. It's just who I am. But there are different types of meditation. And I've had coaching clients, I can't sit still. I can't sit still. I can't
Yeah.
do it. I cannot do it. Then
I'm
walk.
not good at it either.
I'm not either. Then walk. Have a
Mhm.
movement meditation. It's anything that makes you forget about the outside world and
Mhm.
center yourself and get in touch with your higher self.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if that's running, swimming, jogging, running a marathon. I know somebody who does that, crazy person. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, it's if you can't sit still, there are other ways.
Yes.
I've had people who have sworn they couldn't do it. They say, "Okay, I'll try it walking. I've got
Mhm.
a 10K coming up. I'll try it then." And every single time they have come back to me with, I had this bright idea.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's it.
I
It,
see.
and that's I tell the people the same thing, go walk,
Yeah,
I mean, and I took years and years and years and years and years of yoga for the purpose of sitting in meditation. Still can't do it.
yeah. I can't.
I like to be moving,
Yeah,
I mean, that's my energy. I'm a mover,
yeah,
right? And that is so much more helpful for people to know that. Kind of like you don't have to take yoga because you're flexible. You take yoga to get
yeah,
flexible.
yeah. And
You go on walking meditations to meditate.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Even other things like Tai Chi can be
Yeah.
very meditative.
Yes.
I've gotten back into that habit again of doing Tai Chi in the morning. Got out of it for a long time. But
Yeah.
those little things we do for ourselves
Mhm.
really do add up quickly,
They do.
you
They
know?
do. And I just, my little Monday mantra this week was about making little changes,
Mhm.
giving just little teeny tiny, examples. Like if you put your pants on first and then your shirt, put your shirt on and then put your pants on.
Yeah.
I mean, just those little teeny tiny things, if you brush your teeth standing in front of the mirror, walk around. Do you know I walk around when I brush my teeth? Because I can't stand there and do it. I get bored and I don't do it long enough. So I
Right.
walk down and I turn on my little salt lamps and, do all the little things, poke my head out, see what the temperature is.
Yeah.
And it makes a world of difference for me because that's how I am.
Yeah. You have to
Mhm,
get in touch with who you are. And
mhm.
having been someone who was really, really abused for a number of years, when you get out of that situation, you don't know who you are.
No,
You don't know what you like. You
right,
you don't know
right,
the first thing about yourself.
right.
And through the years in doing speaking engagements at mostly battered women's shelters, but, homeless
Mhm,
shelters too, um,
yeah.
that's what the number one thing people, especially women, but a couple of men too, have come up to me after and said, "How do I know who I am?" And
Right.
for me, that was going for walks through the park. That
Mhm.
was, be outside,
Yes.
walk the dog. Uh,
Right.
I was married to an abusive person who killed my cat
Oh,
while I was at work and then called me at work in the middle of a meeting to tell me.
oh my.
And that kind of stuff shatters who you
Right.
are. It
Yes.
shatters your very soul.
Right.
So when I talk to coaching clients, it's really funny how the universe works. Probably right now, 8 out of the 10 clients are from an abusive background.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's something. Find your thing, you know,
Yes.
find your thing to heal. And I
Right.
think a lot of energy workers do that
Mhm.
accidentally. I did
Yeah.
it accidentally. I didn't seek that out, you know,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we do. So the universe puts us
Mhm.
where we need to be
Yes.
and with who we need to be.
Right.
But all of that you can find through meditation.
Yes.
Go for a walk,
Right.
breathe fresh air, smell
Correct.
the roses,
Right. Yeah,
it's
and, I'm kind of the same way. A lot of the people that come and seek me out are people who have had, I won't wanna say abusive relationships, but troubled ones,
yeah,
ones that don't match them anymore. I was married to somebody who drank a lot of alcohol, smoked a lot of pot. I didn't smoke. I've never smoked pot, right? I've never done drugs, but then he started doing coke again. Well, I never didn't even know he had done coke. I didn't know he
right,
smoked every day. So I attract those type of people, that are having issues where their spouse is checked out in some fashion, right? And they're like the primary caregiver or the primary person taking care of the house, because that was me. I was always the one with the money, you know, and I still am, but I live by myself,
you know,
but I do, you know.
it's very freeing sometimes to live by yourself.
It really is.
Yeah, it just that's part of our growth, um, and it's really so many people these days
Mm,
aren't really in touch with what makes them tick. They aren't in touch with what they really enjoy. And
right.
I told someone the other day, do something silly,
Yeah.
you know, go to a painting class. It doesn't matter. You can't draw a straight line with a ruler,
Right. Yeah.
do something silly for you,
Right.
and that helps you try on different hobbies,
Yes.
and
And
that'll
I
show you
tell
what you
people
like.
go back to when you were a kid. What did you like to do?
Yeah.
Right? Did you like to play dress up? Did you like to color? Like, I was a huge colorer. I
Yeah.
loved to color all the time. My parents were constantly buying me books to color. So I did a lot of that. I like to play out in the yard. I was a monkey bar kid too,
Yeah.
like, so, I like to go on the swings, and just those little things as adults, do those things. And it starts to you get into a meditative state because
You
you're
do.
doing something that it has a repetitive nature to it, right? I find coloring hugely meditative.
Yeah, it really is.
Mhm.
I was walking through a park one time because I was lost. I live in the middle of nowhere, so when I go into a city, I'm like, "I don't know where I am. Open
Mm.
space. Where's open space?"
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And there were 2, well, one of them was, 78 and her 84-year-old sister on the swings.
Oh, yeah.
And they were having the best time, and, they were like, "Come join us, come join us," you know, and they were some of the stories. I sat there and swang with them. I missed my meeting that I was in town for completely, but, we sat there on the swings for like an hour, you know?
Oh,
I
wow,
was just
that's
listening to their
awesome.
stories, and it was so much fun. I
Yeah.
felt like I had been in a deep meditation for hours and
Mhm.
hours.
Oh,
But
yes.
those things that feed your soul
Mhm.
and make you happy are
Right.
so important to
They
do.
are. They are, and I like to sing too. And most of the time, the words that I know to sing are all the Christmas songs because you heard them all the time, right? I can't remember the words that are on the radio for what I ever listen to now to save me, most of the time. But, I'll just start belting out a Christmas song because it's like it raises your vibration to sing, right? And then that makes you feel better,
Yeah,
and that will give you more, ideas too, because once your energy is vibrating at a different level, you're more open to different types of ideas and,
yeah,
especially creative ones.
yeah. And creativity
Yeah.
is so important.
Mhm.
It's something that I think we grow up and we decide, I'm an adult now, I can't do this. And
Right.
you should always do that. You should
Yes.
always do
Yeah.
creative things. Don't ever give that up.
Mhm.
One
Right.
of the things um, years ago, I've had a long, difficult life. I'm sorry. But years
Don't be
ago,
sorry.
I picked up my daughter from school. I think it was junior high at the time. Went home. My house was emptied. The guy that I was supposedly engaged to, thought was the love of my life, had moved out during the day when I was at work and she was at school.
Oh,
He even took the dog.
oh my.
And, that was shocking,
Yes.
absolutely shocking. And at first, I didn't want to upset my daughter any more than she already was,
Yeah.
and she is her mother's daughter. And she walked into her room and she said, all my stuff's here, slumber party. And that was what we did. We stayed up that night. We watched silly movies.
Mhm.
Really old black and white, terrible sci-fi. The ones that the effects are so horrendous,
So
they're
bad.
funny. And we had our own marathon and we popped popcorn and we ate junk. And that's what we did that first night. And that was enough to reset.
Yeah.
We were okay,
Right.
you know. And
Right.
a couple of days later, I was like, you know what? Anybody who would do that, and this was a long-term relationship,
Yeah.
anyone who would do that doesn't belong in my life. I
Right.
deserve so much better than that.
Correct.
And that, I think that night of us being really silly
Mhm.
was
Yeah.
really the reset button that
Yeah.
I needed, and she
Right.
needed too. And there were still days that were upsetting.
Yes.
And the third day after he left, we went to the pound and adopted a dog. And that we just like, okay, life 101 point whatever it is,
Right.
and we just started over. And
Right.
so many people need to do that through their
Yeah.
lives,
Yeah.
and you have to understand that's okay,
Yes. It
you
is
know,
okay. And it's
let them
like,
go.
rather let them go. Right.
I yeah.
Okay. Enjoy your life. And that reminds me, like, I can't remember the exact phrasing of it, but I see every once in a while on social media, like, God saying, that person didn't leave you. I took them out of your
Yeah,
life,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
that when you start to think about it that way, because if you're still hanging on to old, that's no longer resonating with you or it doesn't feel good anymore, the new can't come.
Right,
You
exactly,
know? In whatever form it's gonna be, it can't come,
right.
right? And I mean, I once had one of my friends, also an energy worker, said, "I started throwing away all my broken stuff,
Yeah,
just broken stuff, just to make room for something else to come in, whether or not it was another set of pots or another set of dishes or whatever it was." But she started getting more clients just because she did that. She started throwing away all the junk
yeah,
that was, inside, and we start doing that kind of thing with our minds and our and old feelings that, need to be let go as well and released and healed from. new ones can come in,
Right,
fresh, higher vibrational ones can come in, going back to our original conversation
right.
about energy work. And, just that let them theory is so powerful, and that not being able to control things is so powerful, that still allows you then again, like you've been saying, focus on yourself.
You have
Yeah.
to. You have
Yeah,
to. And I think so many people have been taught not to, you
right.
know? How many
Mhm.
people were raised, you always put everybody else before yourself. I heard that a lot growing up.
Oh, yeah.
That's backwards.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
totally
and that's all
backwards.
my mom ever has done,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And now she's like, and she's anxious all the time and stressed and worried about everybody all the time. Her health is poor now.
yep,
This is the woman I grew up with. We went bike rides, with, and we went to this pool and we swam and we did all these exercise type of things. And she was exercising on the floor and she was, and now she can barely move,
right, right.
you know?
I think a certain generation, I know my mother is in very poor health, and she was a doormat her
Oh,
entire life. Do everything for everyone else. They would
mhm,
never reciprocate.
yeah.
And she just, I watched her through because I'm her oldest. So I was kind of, I had a head start on all my siblings, and
You're right.
I
Same.
watched her be young and vibrant when I was born. And then I saw her declining more than she should have.
Yeah, exactly.
This was a woman when I was a kid in grade school. I'd come home from school, there was a wall there when I left, and it was gone when I came home.
Yeah.
She would rebuild our house from the inside out on a regular basis. You know what? I'm gonna put that wall back. It needed to be there. Like,
Yeah.
what? Like,
Yeah. Well, my mom would wash the outsides of the house, like, twice a summer,
yeah.
like, on the ladder and bucket of water. I'm like, "Why are you washing the house?" The kids were looking at her going, "What are you doing up there? Isn't that what the rain's for?"
It was just those things, and I realize as I get older and I'm watching her be very elderly and feeble and
Mhm.
all of those things that I never thought she would ever be. Um, it's like how much of that did I take on?
Yeah,
And I have been very close to death a number of times in my life.
yeah,
And the second time was it. That was it. I was
yeah.
like, things are changing now,
Yes.
And you
I'm
have
not doing this.
yeah, you have to get to that point within yourself that
Yeah,
I deserve better,
exactly.
you know?
Absolutely.
And if other people wanna do what they're gonna do it anyway. Why create
They're
more
just doing
pain,
it.
you know?
Right, right.
It's just, but
And
I know
again, if you want my help, ask me.
right,
Y
right,
eh, I'm not offering anymore, you know, because
you
most
know?
people don't wanna go there.
No,
It's hard to look at ourselves, but you know what? It's the most refreshing, rewarding thing that you can ever do for yourself,
yep.
is look at
There's
your issues.
there's
Mhm.
so many things that we have taken on,
Yeah,
that aren't ours. They're
right.
not ours.
They're not.
I was once in, a job interview. I think I was in my 20s or something then. It was important for me.
Mhm.
I had someone in my life who called the place that I was interviewing at, had me found in my interview, brought to the phone out of the interview, and said, "Can you come pick me up? I need to go somewhere."
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, "No, no, I cannot."
No.
But people will treat you the way they see you treating yourself.
They will.
And apparently I was
Absolutely.
treating myself very poorly at that
Yeah, at that time, yeah. Well, and that's the thing is I do see people doing that all the time, and it just those are the people I wanna be like, "I'm gonna help you," you know? And it's like, "Nope, not unless they want it." And being a restaurant worker for my, my main job right now, it's constant for me.
Yeah.
I'm constantly having to go,
Uh,
you know. So, and a
I,
lot of people will ask me certain questions, but not like, you know, energy work gets to have a session and let's get some life coaching going on.
yeah. Restaurant working is not a job I've ever had. And I've always admired people who could actually do it because I think the first time someone gave me an attitude, I would be fired because I was doing that. I just, it's admirable that you're able to do that. Do you think that doing energy work helps you though? I think that might,
Yeah, absolutely. I did it when I was younger, 15, 16 through high school, college, and that was a different age, right?
right, right,
And now that I'm an energy worker and I'm in that um restaurant, it really does help because I have done so much work and I've worked with so many other people with clients and things and read my self-help books and done all the things that, if somebody's yelling at me, I don't take offense.
that's,
I mean, I'm very, I'm just like, this is your issue, not mine.
yep,
You know, right? What's that thing? This is your circus, it's not mine, or these are your monkeys are not mine, or whatever that saying is. And I'm very, you know, aware
right,
of people being stressed out, upset, having some type of health issue. So I just was like, they got a headache. What are you going to do?
yeah,
They're having a hard time because they're stressed out about money or they're stressed out about they've got too many customers asking for them for things right now or they're hangry because they can't get their food on
right,
time.
right, right, right,
And when you look at it from those type of perspectives, again, change your perspectives, change your own life, it makes it so much easier,
yeah, yeah,
to deal with yourself, let alone everybody else that you come across in any given day.
yeah.
You know?
I
So
was a real estate broker for many, 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 many long years. And until I realized it was really truly sucking my soul dry. Um, but I would have those calls from clients in the middle of the night.
oh
Well, what do I do about this? What do I do? I'm like, okay, I'm awake now. You know? And I one time I had a friend ask me because I was always, the big thing that will kill a real estate deal, at least in the area that I was working, quicker than anything else, is a silly ceiling fan.
oh geez.
The seller would want to take the ceiling fan. Why you would do that, I don't know. But I probably bought, I don't know, a dozen ceiling fans to keep
Wow.
a deal together. And, by the time I, I live in a very tiny place, so the Home Depot people were realizing I kept buying ceiling fans all the time. And they're like, we can give you a discount if you want to get a contractor account. I'm like, I'm not a contractor. But it just there were so many things that I had to bend over backwards to do to keep
Yes.
people from, going after each other.
Right.
And at the time that I finally stopped all of that, I was like, whoa, I used to have migraine headaches all the time. I haven't had a migraine headache in years. Huh. Wow. I have so much energy now.
Right.
And you realize how things slowly build up
Mhm.
time.
The
And
time.
it just, I tell people it's the worst thing I ever did financially and the best thing I ever did for my health.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and
Taught you a
sometimes
lot of
that's,
things.
yeah, and sometimes you have to realize that,
Yeah, you do.
you know?
I mean, and that's all that we're doing here in this realm of reality is, learning lessons, figuring things out, having experiences, and, being able to, kind of assimilate them so that we can move on to a different one.
Yeah,
A different
absolutely.
experience here, but maybe a different realm of reality once we're no longer in this one, right?
we're winding down on time, and I want to go back to the let them topic.
Mhm.
Um, what's something that people can do to really let someone be them and really let them go if need be, or rearrange a relationship? How do they
That's
get
a
through that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's profound, it's deep.
Yeah.
No, because I do believe that it does depend on the situation,
Right,
but I think when you do that, let them do what they're gonna do or act how they're gonna act, then, she says, apply the back to you, which makes sense to us energy workers. Well, I'm going to be like this, or I'm going to act like that, instead of reacting
right.
something, right? Because if we're always reacting, we're never acting, right? And she has a really great example, and it actually fits my life really well too, because I've done the same thing. Nobody calls me to go out. Nobody calls me to do anything. And then I'm like, well, you don't call anybody to go do anything, Heather.
Right.
So I wasn't acting, I was just upset that people weren't coming, and I'm
Yep,
like, okay, let them do their things, let them make their plans. Well, and then I started making plans, and it
right,
made me happier. I was calling people, hey, let's meet for lunch, let's meet for coffee, let's catch up on Zoom, let's whatever, right?
right.
I was doing it, right? So again, I think that is really, really a good balance of how to like look at that type of a theory
Mhm.
when you are dealing with situations that you can't control, with people that you can't control. Because again, who can you control? Me.
Yep.
I can control me. You can control Kelly.
I think, that's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow, you know,
Mhm.
and just from experience with clients,
Yeah.
that's something that really is a sticking point for people.
Yeah.
"But that's my child." I heard that a lot. "I can control my" "No, you can't. Once they're an adult, you cannot."
Nope. Cannot.
And
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 when
it
and you can guide, you know, request,
yeah,
it doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
no, and I think people need to really be kinder to themselves.
Yeah.
Um, you know, kids are gonna do things, people are gonna do things. People make mistakes,
Yes.
it just happens, and I've
Yes.
seen way too many parents beat themselves up over a
Mm,
mistake their child made.
right.
You
Yeah.
can teach them, you can guide them, you can instruct them to a point, but then they have
Mhm.
to live their own lives.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important for people to take away. Be kind to yourself when you're
Right.
letting people go.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's
You
really,
have to.
you have to. You just have to. You have to
Because
put yourself first.
just like you can't control everybody, everybody is not your fault.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Everything they do is not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's always a good thing to remember too.
Yeah. But sometimes people just do things that make you go, "What were you thinking?"
Yeah, right.
But it's their thing,
Yep,
They
yep.
have to deal with it.
That's right.
It's really, everyone is different. And
Everyone
just
is.
just because you were raised in a certain household. I have siblings. We could not be more different.
Yes.
We could not be more different.
Right.
I've had people meet my family and go, "Really? You're related to them?" Yeah, yeah, go figure. But
Yeah.
we are all different. The one common thing is we need to be kinder to ourselves.
Mhm.
Learn about yourself. Take
Yes.
yourself to the movies.
Yes.
I used to do that. I would just
Mhm.
take myself to the movies
Right.
and, do little fun things. You don't always have to be with a group of people. You
Right.
can do things on your own.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely. And once you start doing it, that's freeing too.
and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun. You can pick the movie. You can get
Oh,
your
yeah.
own popcorn. You can,
Oh, yep. Yep. You can go your own any restaurant you want to go to,
yeah,
because I've done that a lot.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Like, nobody to do anything with, I'm like, "I'm going out to dinner."
yeah.
I
Going
go.
by myself. Yeah,
All by myself.
but, I think that's a good place to end it. Be kind to yourself. You
Yes.
know, don't chase people. They want to run, wave bye-bye.
Yes.
Packing,
Right?
you know,
Ex
it's really, really important stuff. So
Mhm,
once again, the book is Let Them. It's
mhm.
Mel Robbins.
Mel
I do
Robbins, yes.
love her. No, she's not paying me to talk about her book. Um,
Nope. Me neither.
it's just a good one that,
It
like I said before, that a lot of us in this arena have wondered why somebody hadn't written this book before. So
right.
thank you so much for watching.
Yes,
Um,
thank you.
please like, share the video, comment. I read every one of your comments.
Yay.
Um, so it does matter. So thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.